Okay, so for today's session, we will be covering the topic of data security specifically for travelers. After the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A. So if you had any questions regarding data security that were not answered during the presentation, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box, and our presenters will make sure they answer your question during the Q&A. And as always, just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. Please be mindful of your background if your camera is on. And again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat box below. And then also, if you're having any kind of technical difficulties, you can refer to the Zoom support webpage, or you can also phone in. You can find that phone number in the registration link that was sent out. Okay, so let us begin formally just to see who all is joining us. As always, I'm going to launch the poll, and this poll asks, how do you identify? So we have student, faculty, staff, alumni, parent, or other. So I'm just going to give us a couple more seconds to answer. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it looks like we have 82% staff and 18% of faculty. Thank you all for joining us. It's great to have you. Okay, so just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Angelica Gilbo, and I am the program coordinator for the Office of International Safety and Security, and also today's moderator. Also with us today is the director of our Office of International Safety and Security, Aaron Rash, and we have a guest presenter with us today. We have Edward Moses, who is the Associate Executive Director for the Office of Cybersecurity. I am very excited to get into this topic, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you so much, Angelica, and thank you everyone again for joining us today. We're very excited to have our last presentation in this International Travel Risk Series. And again, I'm Erin Rash, Director of the International Safety and Security Office here at Kennesaw State, and I've been here since October of 2019, so it's been quite the year, but I'm very pleased to be able to introduce a co-presenter today, Edward Moses, and he's joining us from our university's ITS department. And so with that, I'll turn over to Edward to say a few words and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you as well. As Erin said, I'm with the UITS Office of Cybersecurity, and I've been with Kennesaw State for about 3 years now, and my responsibilities are things related to governance, risk and compliance, data loss prevention, and pretty much anything when the Chief Information Security Officer is not around.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Okay, so as we mentioned previously, today we're going to focus pretty extensively on data security and how to protect your important information, research, as well as your identity while traveling abroad. So if you have any questions throughout this presentation, again, please use the chat box and put your questions there, and we'll try and get to them at the end of the session. So the first step when traveling abroad, especially if you're going to be taking anything sensitive, data or research materials, is to definitely do your homework. Each country has its own unique data security profile, and of course bad actors are going to be universal, right? So we always want to make sure that we're doing the right things to protect ourselves and protect the information that we are entrusted with. While we've covered a lot of these resources already in more detail, like the Department of State and Overseas Security Advisory Council, these are great places to start to identify a lot of emerging trends, especially in various locations, either through the travel.state.gov website or looking at the crime and safety reports that OSAC puts out. Also, the FBI, I added that in there as well this time because they do have some good generic tips for cybersecurity for traveling safe and for good steps to take. But additionally, I wanted to highlight the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, as well as the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, that have really good websites with information and tips you can take, a lot of which we'll actually go over in this presentation today. And then I did want to plug our own Office of International Safety and Security website. We have, thankfully, some new IT security and research abroad information that was provided to us by UITS, which we're very thankful for. So please check that out as well. So again, when you're doing your research, you want to check and make sure if there are any compliance concerns posed by either the destination that you're traveling to or the equipment or data that you're planning to bring with you on your travels. So what activities are you going to be engaging in while you're abroad, and what do you need in order to do that successfully? If you are traveling to a location that has active sanctions, you'll need to see what the restrictions are put in place by OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. OFAC limits the economic activity between the United States, between entities or individuals, and specific countries or citizens of concern. So sanctioned countries may include locations like the Balkans, Cuba, DRC, Iran, Iraq, Liberia, Zimbabwe, places we generally don't travel to frequently unless we have some very specific reason to be there. These are places with a higher risk profile in general. In addition to those restrictions on the transactions or business activities, there may also be some limitations on what technology can be brought into those specific locations. So check with OFAC to see if there's any specific hardware, software, and I think also services licenses. They're often referred to as the Personal Communications General License. So if you see that you need that general license, you need to check with them and make sure that you're in compliance. And even if there is no OFAC restriction, you do want to think twice about bringing in certain types of equipment such as sat phones or commercial drones, for instance, as there are often legal restrictions on those or necessary documentation that you need to have in order to use those devices in certain countries. For instance, Ethiopia, you would need a specific license if you were planning to bring a sat phone into the country and use it while you were there. Which brings me to the International Traffic in Arms Regulation, or ITAR. And ITAR regulates the movement of any technological items or services that could in some form or fashion pose a national security threat. This could include sensitive research that academics may contribute to, for instance, such as if you were working on a DoD, Department of Defense grant. So making sure that you are researching what items that you are bringing in or what information that you're bringing in, if it is sensitive, that you are in compliance, because there can be some very significant penalties for OFAC and ITAR violations. So I strongly recommend that if you are going to be engaging in any sensitive research with sensitive data or equipment that is regulated, that you check with your organization and make sure that you're complying with export control. So check with IT, check with, if you're Kennesaw State University, check with myself and ITS, or if you're at another institution, check with your department there. So as you're planning what to pack with you as well, so one of the first questions you should ask is, do I need to take this with me? And that's anything in general, right? We always tend to overpack and take too many clothes and things, and we don't end up using half of it, or we have to lug it all the way to our accommodations. The same thing applies with all of your iGadgets and gizmos, right? If you have a smartwatch, do you need to take it with you necessarily? These smart devices often pair with other technology, or by default, they may connect to public networks. So it's pretty easy actually for your information to be compromised if you unwittingly connected to a public network that maybe wasn't so secure or had some malware attached with it. So also based on your destination, there's also the physical security component of that as well. If I'm wearing a smartwatch, I'm also identifying myself as a person of means. I may be setting myself up as a target. So you want to think about, do I really need all of these devices with me? Is there perhaps a low-tech alternative that I could bring? So you don't want to make yourself a target. So one of the best ways to protect your data, so moving to your data if you need to bring your personal devices with you, is whenever possible, try and get a loaner device. If you have to travel with your personal device, however, make sure that you're taking the time before you go to back up all of your sensitive data. Leave anything that's really important, any critical information that you may need, any critical passwords, things of that nature, leave them in a secure location. Also change your passwords and update all of your software. So antivirus, anti-malware, make sure that you're current and up to date. For any passwords that you change them to, make sure that they are strong passwords, and use something that's specific for your trip, right? Just create new credentials for your trip, and then when you come back, you can change everything. If you are able to encrypt your device, definitely do that whenever you can. Just make sure, again, you note what is the profile of the location that you're traveling to, and are you able to use encryption devices? Are you able to use VPNs where you're going? There is a website called Crypto Law, which has a database that lists current regulations by country. Or you can always talk with your IT department and get guidance from them on how to make sure that your data is going to be secure, that you're engaging in best practices with regards to your data while you're traveling. And also just clear your browsing history. Get rid of all your cookies and store data and everything, so that your computer is clean and ready to go. If your device is compromised, or if it's accessed while you are abroad, frequently bad actors will try to ascertain, what information they can gather from those different caches of information. And just as a personal anecdote, I was in China once, many moons ago, and was in my hotel accommodation, or dorm accommodation rather, and came back one day to find that my computer was turned on when I had left it off, and was up to a page on the internet that I definitely had not navigated to. So just making sure that you are monitoring your device, that you are cleaning things off before you go, so that people don't see where you've been, what your history is, and try and gain information from you that way. So if you do leave your device unattended, or otherwise do notice that your computer has that different browser page pulled up, just assume that it's been compromised and notify your organization, either the IT department upon return, or again, if you're Kennesaw State University traveler, you can also reach out to me, International Safety and Security, and we'll get you in touch with ITS as well. And yes, sort of jumped ahead a little bit on that one. For our KSU travelers, make sure that you are using the OneDrive for all of your data storage. If you're traveling someplace where you cannot use the Duo authentication, you can get a Duo mobile key token ahead of your travels. If, again, go on to the ITS website and you can download the KSU Global Protect VPN software, and I encourage you to do that even if you're not planning on traveling anytime soon. It's always good to use the VPN whenever possible to protect your data. And also we have a loaner laptop program, which hopefully Edward can speak more about that is going to be implemented in the future. So again, action items. To summarize some of these steps we talked about in sort of a checklist fashion, the most important things that you can do, first, I didn't really speak to this, but notify your bank that you will be traveling. They are a fantastic first line of defense for notifying you if anything goes wrong. All of these I have personal anecdotes for, so here's another one. When I moved to Japan, again, many moons ago, somewhere along the way between Houston airport and arriving in Tokyo, had my credit card information swiped. Not sure if it was from a skimmer or how that happened, but by the time I landed, my information had been, captured by someone else. They tried to make a transaction in, I think, Pennsylvania. Thankfully, the bank knew that I was traveling to Japan, and so they did stop that, but it was a hassle trying to get a new credit card issued right in the middle of moving to a new location. I didn't even have my new address yet. So, you know, make sure that you are taking those steps on the front end to secure your identity. Again, if you don't need it, don't bring it. Travel light is always the best way to go. If you can, get that loaner laptop, sorry, or remove any of your sensitive files and things that you don't want to bring with you, or that you are concerned about what happens with these documents if your device is, you know, somehow corrupted, or even if, you know, the worst happens, your device, you know, doesn't survive in transit or something. Check for your software updates, get that VPN, and change your passwords. And so on the screen, I've listed some of the most common data security concerns for our travelers. These are identity theft, sensitive data breaches, social media and targeting, and elicitation. So I'm going to hand it over now a little bit to Edward so he can talk about some of the first ones, and then I'll pick it up a little later with social media. Are you on mute? There we go. Okay.
Unmuted. Thank you very much, Erin. All right. And I'm going to be adding a little bit to what Erin said. She stole a lot of my thunder. No, I can't say that. She gave me interesting or very nice segues into some of this information. All right, for when you're at the airport, and if you're at a Starbucks overseas, or when I went to Spain a few years ago, almost every place had its own public Wi-Fi. My phone was actually not international. I only took it for the Wi-Fi, and I did not need cellular service the entire time I was there. There was public Wi-Fi everywhere. That's one good thing. The bad thing is that you don't know who you're connecting to, or if they're a legitimate source or not. There's no real easy way to tell, even for me as a security professional. So just be aware that when you use public Wi-Fi, use your VPN. Especially if you're going to check your bank balance or credit card balance or something like that, be sure to use your VPN along with your Wi-Fi. You can pick up malware. People can scrape the data that's on your screen, or even install a keylogger on a fake Wi-Fi hotspot. Those are very prevalent, especially at airports. So just be aware. Avoid the USB public charging stations. Some of those, the cable actually has something built in that they can use for the same purposes. They'll screen scrape, they'll capture your data as it's going across unencrypted, they'll clone your phone, all kinds of nasty things at those public Wi-Fi charging stations. So take your own charging cable, take your own charging power supply, and plug that into a 220 volt or 110 volt outlet, depending on where you are. Be sure to take the converter kit if you can. Credit card skimmers. You'll see those a lot at gas pumps and ATMs, almost everywhere, even in convenience stores. People can slip them over the top of the card reader within seconds. You'll never know it was there. So just take an extra few seconds and try and jiggle the credit card reader where you put your card in. It's not as prevalent with chip and pin lately, but they're coming up with new things every day. And on that note also, know that companies like Capital One have one-time use credit card numbers that are tied back to your credit card number. So if it does get compromised, no harm, no foul as far as you're concerned. Because remember, you are only liable for the first $50. That being said, also don't use your debit card when you're overseas. I went to Hawaii a few years ago, and by the time I got back home, someone was trying to get a couple of $100 out of an ATM in California, but luckily my bank caught it. They're usually on top of that stuff, but don't take chances with your actual money. In other words, not with your debit card. Use that credit card, or try to get one-time use credit card numbers. Be aware that your luggage will be searched. It's almost guaranteed. Even in the United States, your luggage is going to get searched by TSA. So just expect that that's going to happen. Keep your passport with you at all times. Make copies of your passport so you can give them to the hotel clerk, and also put a copy of your passport in all of your bags. Know that they may do unnecessary inspection or look at your laptop or any personal electronic devices for an extended period of time. They may even try to connect to it. Expect that they will try to get your data, and there's not a lot you can do about it. We have devices called Iron Key, and I just so happen to have one handy. These are USB drives. They're encrypted. The only good thing I can say about these as far as you're traveling are the fact that if it's lost or stolen, nobody can get to it. So your data is safe in that sense, but be aware that you can be compelled by a government official in certain other countries to decrypt the data. They could compel you to read it. Not a lot you can do about that, so just know that we do have them available for you for when you travel. All right, the same thing at the hotel. The hotel's Wi-Fi. I go to conferences every year. One big one is called DEF CON. It's in Las Vegas, and you'd be amazed within the first few hours of you arriving how many Wi-Fi hotspot names look almost identical to the hotel's Wi-Fi hotspot. It might say Hilton hotspot, Hilton Wi-Fi, but there's only one actual Hilton hotspot. People are setting them up there to see how many people they can dupe into logging in via those hotspots. So hotels are a particularly nasty place, as are airports. And as Erin said earlier, you could come back to your hotel room and catch the staff going through all of your stuff, including your luggage, maybe giving you a gift that'll keep on giving. They place inside your laptop that you'll never detect. Be aware that that's going to happen. You're most likely being monitored. Assume that you are. Always assume that you're being monitored. So be careful what sites you go to. If a taxi driver wants to take you someplace special and they're overly helpful, just say no. Go wherever you were originally trying to get to in the first place. When you store sensitive items, yes, hotels have safes, but we have lock-picking games and things like that we do with security professionals. The hotels can get into their own safes without even a thought. So assume that whatever you put in there is going to be searched, possibly even stolen. If it's that sensitive, like I said earlier, Iron Key, you can put this in your pocket and take it with you. And at least you know that when you do let someone take a look at it, you're aware. Keep your most sensitive stuff on something like OneDrive and attach to that to the cloud using your VPN. That's about as safe as you're going to get when you're traveling. Assume that whatever you put on your laptop, remember we're in R2, as you all know, we're going to be targeted by a lot of these places. You should turn off your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth when it's not in use, because your system, just like when you get here, you don't have to log into your Wi-Fi. It automatically finds the KSU wireless access point after you attach to it the first time. You don't want to keep it doing that. Turn that thing off when you're not using it. Of course, use trusted and secured networks. Almost impossible when you're overseas, but do the best you can. Always use your VPN, especially if it's in the hotel or the airport. And of course, if it's legal, you'll know that in advance, hopefully, before you attach to it. Don't open your sensitive documents and view your sensitive data while you're on the plane or attached to an unsecured VPN, to an unsecured Wi-Fi network, and only go to websites you absolutely need to. There's lots of pop-ups that occur. You've seen them. You've seen adware come up when you're trying to browse to a website, especially ones that you haven't been to before. Try and only stick with certain websites and install some kind of pop-up blocker. As Erin mentioned earlier, we have several loaner laptops. We have a couple of Dell Windows laptops and a couple of MacBook Air laptops that you could take to travel. What we do is we load our standard KSU image on it, and then we erase it when you come back. So in other words, you have to put your data on there. When you come back, download it immediately, and then it gets wiped. We also have iron keys to loan you and power conversion kits that go with these. We're calling them travel kits. You can find more information, as Aaron said, on the Global Affairs website. Back to you, Erin.
Thank you so much. So moving on to social media, as the technology evolves, of course, so do the security threats, right? And social media is not exempt from this as well. So if you're going to be traveling to a location with a higher geopolitical risk profile, just make sure that your social media profiles and pages do not include anything that might be controversial, or you have any incendiary tweets or posts or other comments or remarks. Again, you can, while you're transiting, be asked to pull up all of that information to show your profile page if you're, pegged for an extensive search. So just make sure that you do that research. There are, unfortunately, a lot of stories about travelers, including students, who are temporarily detained or otherwise barred from entering a country just because of their social media content. So that link on the website there just happens to be a recent example from a University of Florida student who was trying to go study abroad in Israel, and she was denied entry because they found, I think on her Facebook page, that she was involved or affiliated in some capacity. I think she might have been a president or vice president of the university chapter of a student organization that was supporting Palestine. So, we can definitely, be targeted, and people will be looking at these things and doing their research, and that can unfortunately impact our ability to have a successful experience. So you just want to make sure that you're protecting yourself by being cognizant of what you have out there on your social media profiles and such. Another thing to be cognizant of while you are traveling is sharing your location. So if you're checking into locations through social media or otherwise, you're advertising your whereabouts. And especially if you get in the habit of going to certain locations like a coffee shop every morning, now you're advertising your patterns. And so, you want to make sure not only are you mixing up what you're doing, but you're also not advertising where you're going to be, because that's just going to be, unfortunately, you are assume that you're being monitored. Someone will pick up on that, and they may know, hey, I know that this person has developed a pattern, or I know that this person just checked into this location, which means that they're not in their room. So make sure that you are not advertising that information. Finally, there was a survey that was conducted of study abroad participants. So this was during a 2017 conference. I think CIEE did that, and found that 86% of the students that they surveyed, which was a fairly large sample size if I recall, did admit to using dating apps while they were traveling. So again, great to go out and make friends, but just be careful about what information that you're putting out there. So just a couple of techniques or things to encourage safe behaviors while using any social media, not just dating apps, but do not share any of your upcoming flight information, not publicly. That's only going to make you a target for cybersecurity theft, but also a prime target for an unfortunate trend we're seeing in certain countries and regions of the world, such as Latin America, which is the virtual or scam kidnapping. A lot of times what will happen is someone will, pick someone at the airport and take their phone and call back to mom or dad or, emergency contact A, and let them know that they've, got this person and to wire a couple $100, maybe $1,000 to a bank account. They don't even need to get the person's actual phone now. If they have the information that they can dig online from the social media profiles, they can find out who their, important loved ones are, and they can figure out, oh, this person's going to be in flight between this window of time. Now I've got a period of time I can reach out and say, hey, I have your son, I have your daughter, I have, your girlfriend, boyfriend, send money. And the person tries to reach out to their loved ones. They can't because they're on the plane and out of contact for a set period of time. And so they panic and they do the easy thing, which is, okay, I'll just give the money. And of course, plane lands, the person gets off, usually none the wiser, and there's really no recourse for that. So make sure that, we're being careful about sharing flight information, as well as keep any plans that you make to meet up with friends or to be in places private. Don't, put that on your public posts. It goes into the same idea as the checking into locations. You don't want to advertise where you're going to be. And then the last thing I would say is to maybe wait to post any photos or videos until after the fact, or even better, when you get home after your trip. All goes back to unintentionally tipping off bad actors to what you're doing and where you're going to be. And okay, moving on to elicitation. So this is where I'm getting into some of the more, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but elicitation, it is a valid concern in academia. So elicitation is the strategic use of conversation to try and unwittingly obtain sensitive information from a target. It's basically what good spies are trained to do, right? And it's far more effective and subtle than extensive interrogation and questioning. So why are academics a good target? Well, a lot of times they're working with the US government or with large corporations on research projects, trying to develop some sort of proprietary information, or they have other knowledge of developments that are of importance to these other countries or other foreign entities. So I once heard an FBI agent describing the biggest threat to national security as a person walking around a college campus with a clipboard, because we have a lot of very high-level research that goes on in our campuses here that a lot of people want to have access to that information. And so, especially large research universities, we are an R2, right? So we're on the up and up. We're getting on some people's watch list, right? So we're starting, as we increase our research activity, we're starting to partner with the US government on more projects. Maybe we're receiving a Department of Defense grant. We're becoming more attractive to foreign entities, essentially. And it is surprisingly simple to do a search online and find out, which universities and which individuals are receiving these grant funds. And also I did share a link to a DoD grant website with a friend who's in the military. And within 5 minutes, he was calling me shocked at how easy it is to figure out, even without having a very, sophisticated technological background or expertise in that field. And granted, all of the classified information is omitted or redacted, but it's not that hard to really make connections and figure out what these projects are working on. So again, we unfortunately, that makes academics, that makes faculty and researchers targets. So one scam that we are seeing is that a professor or a researcher will be singled out by a foreign university and approached by them, asking them to come and give a presentation or a lecture, and usually they'll pay for the accommodations. Maybe they will offer a small stipend, and then they start meanwhile having all these conversations, trying to get a little bit more information, and also maybe even accessing their data or giving a USB with the university's logo on it to the faculty member or staff member as a gift. That, again, it's one of those gifts that keep on giving, right? So you just want to make sure that we are being very careful with what we are putting in our devices, as well as what we're sharing with people. Students also are not exempt from this. They make soft targets as well. There is a short video, and I'm not really going to comment on the video itself so much as to say that the FBI did put this short video together about Glenn Duffy Shriver, I think is his name, who was an individual who in real life was approached by the Chinese Ministry of State Security while he was studying abroad, although he did not actually engage in any of the espionage activities until much later after he was a student. But again, students can be attractive targets as well. So to recap some of the best practices that we talked about, one thing I do want to talk about is separating your credit cards, your IDs from those phone wallets. They're convenient. I have one myself. I like them. But when I'm traveling, I definitely don't want to keep all of my documents in that one little area, especially with phones being very high, high profile targets themselves. Everyone wants to get the latest iPhone. We see a lot of times now that people will be targeting individuals who are walking out of transit hubs, out of train stations, out of airports, and talking on their phone. And they will, maybe have a Vespa or similar form of transportation and drive by and snatch the phone. If you keep your ID in there, if you keep your credit card information in there, then you've lost not just your means of communication, but also your financial connections, your IDs. So just making sure that you're being cognizant of that. RFID protective wallets, I know that there's a lot of discussion about the effectiveness of that and whether or not RFID, how many people really can scan that, effectively and easily while traveling. But when in doubt, it might behoove you to have an RFID enabled protective case for your credit cards. And I think some people have also mentioned that aluminum foil works as well. I'm not sure if that is as effective at disrupting radio waves, but just putting that out there. I'm not the expert on that particular one. Make sure, again, that you are separating your important information, having your credentials, keeping them off of public computers, just using them on your private personal computers, and be careful to the extent possible about leaving your devices unattended. And finally, when you get back home from your trip, best practice, again, just assume that while you were abroad, your device was compromised, or maybe you picked up something on a network somewhere. Go ahead and change all of your passwords, reset them and clear out everything. And then if you did borrow that laptop, be sure to follow back up and return that to the UITS, as well as if you did have any sort of suspicious activity, any concerns, please be sure to report that to us. You can email globalsafety@kennesaw.edu or contact UITS to find out what you should do. And with that, Edward, did you have any final thoughts or things that you would like to add?
Oh, that sounds great. You mentioned a lot of the wallets these days have the RFID blockers, so and so do some of the phone cases, I think, or at least a pouch on those phone cases where you can put your credit card to block the RFID.
Well, thank you all so much for attending our presentation, and with that, I'll turn it over to Angelica for the Q&A.
All right, thank you so much, Erin and Edward, for sharing this information. Definitely valuable information for travelers. So we can begin the Q&A session. I'll go ahead and pull up the chat box right now. And if you all have any questions or comments about the presentation, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box and we can answer them for you. We'll wait about maybe 30 more seconds. 30 seconds, sounds good for any questions. And if there aren't any questions, then we'll go ahead and wrap up.
And if I can ask, Edward, was that did you say Iron Key? Is that what that device that you shared?
Correct.
Oh, perfect. Very nice.
It just so happens I have them on my desk. We also have the data locker drives, but these are for tremendous amounts of data. If you have this much data, I would say put it in the cloud instead, because this is about 500 gigabytes worth on this particular drive.
Okay, well, if no one has any questions, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all again for joining us for our final session in the Travel Risk series. And if you're looking for more resources, you can find them at our website, or you can go ahead and email us at globalsafety@kennesaw.edu. And that concludes this information. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.